Republicans are trying to jam Trump's big broken bill through the U.S. Senate while threatening democracy. Well, Senate Democrats are fighting back, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is here to discuss. Welcome back to Defending Democracy. I'm Marc Elias. Let's get started. Senator Schumer, welcome to Defending Democracy.
Marc, great to be here with one of the great lawyers in our country who has protected democracy in many ways and is fighting to do it at this moment, I am sure.
Well, I appreciate that. Speaking of things that we are currently doing, as we're recording, Republicans seem intent on passing what appears to be an absolutely terrible bill. Now, I am not an expert in policy, as you know, but my sense is that what they're trying to do is take away people's health care and at the same time give tax breaks to billionaires. What's the status of things and what's going on?
Well, first, this is one of the worst bills that's happened in the last 100 years. And you summed it up correctly. If you had to say it in 4 words, you'd say billionaires win, families lose. This bill is just outrageous. It basically says that we're going to dramatically cut health care more than we've ever cut it before. 16 million people will lose their health care benefits, many more who aren't on ACA or on Medicaid will have their premiums. Even if you don't have Medicare or Medicaid, your premiums would go dramatically up because of what they've done. The cuts would decimate hospitals, rural hospitals. We estimate 1 out of every 3 rural hospitals would close. Those are in Republican areas, most of them. And for many counties, we have counties like this in upstate New York, it's the largest employer and the only source of health care. But even big hospitals would close. The head of one of the biggest hospitals in the Bronx told me that he could close. Over 1 million people will lose their jobs in healthcare. Often these are jobs that are ladders up. People who get these jobs are given a good skill. We see it when we go to hospitals. They get paid decent wages, oftentimes because it's union labor, and they lose those jobs. It is just devastating across the board. But it's not the only thing they're doing. They're cutting food stamps. They're telling, SNAP. They're going to take food out of the mouths of hungry children. And in the bill, you'd probably get about $5 a day to feed a kid. Well, $5 doesn't buy a dozen eggs these days with the prices going up. In terms of clean energy, a bill that we passed 2 years ago, which was going to move America into an era of wind and solar and clean energy, they're cutting all that back because the fossil fuel industry hates clean energy, because they know it's the future. Solar cells, solar panels are the cheapest way to get new energy the quickest. Oil and gas know that they're the past and they want to kill this, and Republicans did. Now, why are they doing all these bad things and many more? Cutting education, cutting housing, cutting so much? I'll tell you why. To give tax breaks to billionaires. There's a small, rich, very rich, greedy group of billionaires, calling them very rich, of course, as we've done to their billionaires. And they just don't want to pay taxes. And they hate the government in general because the government puts barriers. It protects their customer. It protects the consumer. It protects workers. It protects the land, air, and water that we treasure. And they want to cut all of that out so that they can, A, pay almost no taxes, and B, have no barriers in their way. So basically, they're cutting your health care, cutting food from hungry children, cutting clean energy, which employs 840,000 people who would lose their jobs under that, all to give tax breaks for billionaires. And one other thing, Marc, the American people have begun to learn how bad this bill is. Donald Trump calls it his big, beautiful bill. We call it his big, ugly betrayal. He's betrayed the American people. The things he promised in the campaign, he's totally going back on and reversing. And now about 80% of the public knows what this bill is, and 2/3 of them don't like it. Almost every Democrat doesn't like it, but independents don't like it about as much as Democrats, and even a good chunk of Republicans don't like it. So that's why the Republicans are squirming. Why is it taking them so long to put together a bill? Because a lot of them know one thing. They know that this bill is highly unpopular and will do devastation to their states. And so they're squirming. And that's why it's been delayed for so long.
So I gotta ask you one question that I don't understand that maybe you can help explain to me,
Yeah.
which is that, as you point out, like the rural hospital thing, like is really essential for a lot of red states. I assume the Medicaid cuts probably disproportionately hit, a number of red states. And so you'd think the Republicans would look at this and be like, this is terrible for our constituents. Like this is already got. Do they know that this is bad for them and they don't care? Are they just like sucking up to Donald Trump? I mean, I don't believe there are any moderates in the Republican caucus. I think Tillis and Collins are like just frauds claiming to be moderates. But like, what is the rationale when you hear Republican senators talk about this, like, for their constituents?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll tell you what it is. They are, Lisa Murkowski, she summed it up best. She said, we are all afraid. She was the only honest one in the whole bunch. They are afraid. What are they afraid of? Retribution, vicious, nasty retribution by Donald Trump. Here's what's been reported about Joni Ernst. It's a horrifying story. Joni Ernst enlisted. She was a farm girl from Iowa. She enlisted in the military. She was brutally raped. The military just didn't do anything to go after the people who did it to her. So she ran for the Senate and she won. And she did actually, to her credit, fix up some of the stuff in the military. Well, Hegseth is nominated. This guy's been accused of rape multiple times. Of course, it won't be prosecuted under a Trump Justice Department that doesn't care about rule of law. All they care about is backing up their friends who back up Donald Trump. And so she said she couldn't vote for this guy, giving her history. So Joni Ernst felt so pressured by Donald Trump and by Elon Musk that even though she originally, because of what happened, she said she'd vote no, she voted yes. And they're all afraid. They're just afraid of Donald Trump. Here's the thing they don't realize. Abe Lincoln said it best. Public sentiment is everything. Even though they're going along with Donald Trump, they're not going along with the public. In fact, they're poking their eye in the Republic, with the people in the Republic. And so they're going to get hurt. In 2017, they passed this big tax cut. We beat them on health care. And they lost seats in the House, and they lost the House in 2018. It doesn't work. And being afraid of Donald Trump may solve your short-term fears, but your long-term damage that you'll do with your constituents could be far more harmful to them, but they don't quite get it yet.
Okay, so people who follow the democracy issues have been actually quite happy with Democrats in the Senate. You guys managed to kill the provision that, it started in the House as an effort to strip courts of the ability to hold contempt, and then it came to the Senate, and somehow Senate Republicans wanted to make it so that in order to get injunctions against the government, there had to be these big cash bonds, which would have made it impossible to sue. All of that got stripped out, or seems to have gotten stripped out by the parliamentarian after Senate Democrats made a big fuss over it. So that was a big win for you guys. You guys also, from what I hear, you think you have killed the MOVE Act. This is the law that would basically make it harder for people to register to vote. It would really hit married women hard. How confident are you that you guys can keep that law from going forward?
I think we're confident. When they need 60 votes, they need us. This reconciliation bill, as everybody knows, only needs 51. So even without us, they can really screw the American people. But when they need the 60, we're the barrier. They will never pass the SAVE Act in the Senate as long as I am leader. And I believe that every Democrat will vote against it. They would need 7 to add to their 53 to get 60. They won't get it. Let me just, so people know, the SAVE Act is Jim Crow for all of America. I mean, they say you need voter ID. Well, that sounds okay. Some people know, people who know the history know that the South has used voter ID to stop particularly Black people, poor people from voting. But okay, voter ID. But here's the voter ID you need. You need either your passport or your up-to-date birth certificate. So if a woman's original birth certificate said Shirley Jones, but she got married and now she's Sir Shirley Smith, she has to find her former birth certificate. That's not just true of women who get married. It's true in a lot of ways. It's estimated that millions and millions of people would lose their franchise. And these guys don't believe in democracy. if you read some of the people who study why democracies are lost, they clip away at democracy, so it's not a real democracy, even though there might be voting. This is very dangerous, but we will beat that SAVE Act. It's horrible. What you said about the courts, same thing. When the court, and even today's court case, which stopped nationwide injunctions, they want pure executive power. Anyone who opposes them in any way, you can look at the law firms or the universities or the nonprofit groups, they want to destroy them because they want to have their way. When Trump said he wanted to be a dictator, people should know he wasn't kidding. That's who he is.
Yeah, look, one of the reasons why I've enjoyed working with you over the course of the last few decades is you are one of the smartest, if not the smartest, political strategists Democrats have. You also fight hard, and you fight hard for voting. And you fight
I'm from Brooklyn, we fight hard.
and you fight hard for democracy.
Yeah.
And so, you can go back and you can look at the MOVE Act, which was, at the time that you brought that bill forward, a lot of people had not focused on the barriers that military and overseas voters were facing in voting. Right. And now look what's going on. Look what's going on. Look what just happened in North Carolina with this state Supreme Court election that Republicans tried to steal. They tried to steal it by basically disenfranchising those military and overseas voters. And it was in part because of the law that you pioneered, you championed, you sponsored, and you brought forward in the past, that we were able in court to beat back the efforts of Republicans to steal elections.
These people are overseas risking their lives for us, and they're taking away their right to vote because they're overseas, and it takes a little longer for them to pre-register or get the mail back. It was outrageous. So we stopped that. We guaranteed our soldiers, our people overseas, the right to vote, who are fighting.
And I had a front row seat to see just how hard you fought for the John R. Lewis bill and the Freedom to Vote Act. You had your entire caucus supporting it. And what I want to ask you is, Republicans, not a single Republican in the House or Senate voted for the Freedom to Vote Act or its predecessor, the For the People Act. It started as one and then it got...
And the John Lewis Act, too.
And the John Lewis, right. You were in Congress in 2006, you were in the Senate in 2006, when the Voting Rights Act passed 98-2, or 98-0, I'm sorry, 98-0. And I haven't gone back and looked. I assume the MOVE Act passed with bipartisan support of Republicans.
It did.
What is going on with the Republicans? Why, when you talk to your Republican colleagues, none of them support voting rights?
It's a wicked devolution, so to speak. Ronald Reagan supported the Voting Rights Act, and it was renewed. George H.W. Bush supported the Voting Rights Act, and it was renewed. George W. Bush supported the Voting Rights Act, and it was approved again. What happened in 2010, a group of hard right people started taking over the Republican Party. These people, the Tea Party people, started going against voting. You know why? They lose when everyone votes. And they hate that. And so and when Donald Trump came in, he made it much, much, much worse. So now not only are they not supporting voting rights, they're taking away voting rights, left, right, and center. They're taking away other people's rights, left, right, and center. It goes along with what I said before. They don't want democracy. And so these are one of the ways they do it. The Republican Party has so gone down the drain, down a dirty, stinking drain, to just cut off voting rights. And it's against the tradition of Republican Party all along. The new Republican Party, let's say this to any Republicans who are watching this. It ain't your mother's or father's Republican Party. It's nasty, it's anti-democratic, it's for a small band of billionaires, and it's really hurting democracy in America.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, we see it at the federal level, we see it at the state level, and we've seen it in the executive orders. You were a plaintiff in a case where I was happy to represent you. We struck down part of an executive order that Donald Trump issued to try to take over voting, to literally take away the state. What people don't understand is the Constitution says that the rules of elections are set in the first instance by the states, and then with the ability of Congress, and it specifically says Congress, to set time, place, and manner if it wishes. And yet there's Donald Trump issuing an executive order as if he somehow gets to decide. And, you know, you went to court. I was happy to represent you, and we won. And I'm just curious.
It was that MOVE Act on steroids. Not only did it do what the MOVE Act tried to do.
Not the MOVE Act, the SAVE Act.
SAVE Act, rather, with the SAVE Act on steroids. And it not only tried to take away voting rights, it tried to run elections. And when they try to run elections, you know, look what happened in Georgia. We had to fight that back when we won those 2 seats in Georgia to take back the majority in 2020, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. And when Georgia got hold of things, they passed nasty laws. You couldn't even serve water to people waiting 100 hours online in the heat. They just wanted to discourage people from voting in every way, but they also want to take all this other centers of voice, of reason, of power in society away and have it only be in President Trump. And that's really dangerous, really dangerous.
So I'm curious about that. You know, you mentioned the law firms. There are the universities. I think you are an alumni of Harvard University, as I recall.
I'm proud that they fought back, and I hope they keep fighting back.
Yeah.
I hope other universities will join them and say, I just read somewhere today, Johns Hopkins, they have a conservative president, and Trump didn't go after them directly like he went after Harvard or Columbia or Cornell. But they're losing more money than anybody because of this. Part of this is this reconciliation bill, and part of this DOGE move to cut all the kind of scientific research they do, all the kind of support they do. Again, if it's an alternative center of thought, of some prominence, of some power that can fight back the executive, they want to cut it down everywhere you go. That's Trump. That's who he is.
Yeah. Speaking of who Trump is, so you are obviously a famous New Yorker. He is a famous New Yorker. You undoubtedly watched him over the many years that he was tabloid fodder, and then, through his various marriages and iterations. The line I always like about Donald Trump was something from the editors of Spy magazine, which was a magazine in the late 80s, said that he was a short-fingered vulgarian. Which I always thought got him well. What do you've seen him in a lot of different settings. Like, what makes him tick? Is he just an authoritarian? Does he believe in anything? Some people say, well, he really believes in tariffs.
You know what he said? He said, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Central Park and no one would go after me.
Fifth Avenue.
Fifth Avenue, wherever it was. Fifth Avenue's right alongside Central Park.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that shows. You see, he's the New Yorker. I'm the guy from the suburbs.
But anyway, it's total ego. It's total me. And it's sort of, some people say he's an infantile narcissist. We know he's a narcissist. It's me. But the infantile part means whatever's in front of him at the moment, he goes for. And it doesn't matter what'll happen 6 hours after that or what he said 6 hours before it. So he'll just totally lie, totally reverse himself. He doesn't care. He does whatever he thinks benefits him at the moment. And it's dangerous, it's disastrous, it's reckless. It's what's caused our prices to go up and people are paying more. It's caused so many people already to lose jobs. It's caused something that'll probably be a recession if we pass this bill, because over 2 million people, about 800,000 in clean energy, over 1 million in healthcare, will lose their jobs. You can't lose 2 million jobs without it damaging the economy. He just sees whatever's in front of his face and he listens to the last person who talks to him, and he makes things up. I remember the first time I met him, he would just become president. I had just become minority leader. And there was I
assume you had met him before when he was.
Yeah. The first time this is the first time we were together when he had been elected president. He had sort of a reception for McConnell, McCarthy, Pelosi, and all the 4 leaders. Okay. And he talks about how it's so horrible how Democrats are depriving people of voting. He says, I have a friend, he's a golfer. I think he was German. He stood online to vote in Florida and they took 4 Hispanics and moved them ahead of the line on him, okay? Well, the press did some research. They found out who this golfer was. His name was Bernhard Langer. He's a German. He never voted. He was never online voting. He just makes things up. I have never, You know, I've disagreed with a lot of presidents in so many different ways, but I've never seen a president who just thinks he can lie at will and get away with it. We can't let him get away with it. That's what we're trying to do here with the Democratic majority and minority in the Senate.
And I think you're doing a good job. Look, I think that the fact is, on issues of democracy, like I said, I'm not an expert on all policies, but on issues of democracy, I think the Senate Democrats are doing a really good job and actually having a fair amount of success. I mean, you know, being able to block these efforts to restrict voting rights is going to be among the most important things we can do for 2026.
Yeah, and let me say this. Yeah, just so people thought, okay, what'd you get done in 2021, 2022, where we passed the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure bill and the guns rights. We got into law to protect gay marriage. We had the IRA, which did more for environment. We did a lot. But people said, so what'd you do the next 2 years when we lost the House, even though we kept the Senate? We put in 235 good progressive judges. You helped us in a lot of ways find some good people. And had 2/3 were women, 2/3 were people of color. They're our first line of defense right now. When the executive branch overreaches, which Trump always does, and Doge always does, and Musk always did, the first line of defense is for someone to go to court and file suit in those federal district courts. We're winning, like many of which you helped put together and prosecute. We've won about 95% of the cases.
That's right.
In area after area after area, because we put in those judges. So it made a difference. That's why, by the way, it's so important we get the majority in 2026 in the Senate. I know people say the House is easier. It's a little easier, but the Senate, I would argue, is more important. So they can't put in these right-wing judges, whether it be in the Supreme Court or in the district courts, and we can continue to have a bench that actually follows the law instead of follows Trump.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that next because I think that I think history will record the job you and President Biden did around judges as among the most consequential things of this era. I know that those other big bills are big bills and they're important, and I'm not minimizing them. But the fact is that democracy is under attack right now. And, you know, John Thune and Mike Johnson are not going to stand up against Donald Trump. Their caucuses are not standing up against Donald Trump. The only thing we have is the judiciary. And because of the judges, you helped shepherd through. And as you said, not just the sheer number, but who they are. I mean, a guy like Dale Ho, who I think you were I know Dale Ho very well from his time in private practice at the ACLU, but he was someone I know personally championed.
Yeah, one of the greatest voting rights lawyers in America, and they held him up because of that. But we got him.
Yeah, that you look at if we are able to survive this era of Donald Trump, it will in large measure be because of the judges that you helped champion. And I have to say, I give a lot of credit to your colleagues who did the Bovee hearing. I thought they were great. I thought that Peter Welch was great. I thought that Cory Booker was great. I don't want to leave anyone out. I mean, I thought that they were from top to bottom really exposed this guy who is like Donald Trump's personal lawyer, who's like his enforcer at DOJ. And I think that you guys deserve a lot of credit for the way you guys so far handled it.
Thank you. We have a great team. You mentioned two of the great ones. Our Judiciary Committee is like, to put it as a Yankee fan, Mantle, Ruth, Gehrig, all these great baseball players. But the bottom line is that what Trump wants, what he's done, he's changed the Justice Department, which used to be one of the great things in America, the closest to a nonpartisan civil service who followed the law and the rule of law and the Constitution, regardless of who is president. He's turned it into a attack dog to go after his enemies and the people he doesn't like. It's incredible. And Bovee is one of these people. They even say it. What did Kash Patel say? He said, my job is to go after Trump's enemies. That's the head of the FBI, which has been an institution, again, that followed rule of law. Even when one party or the other was in power, they didn't care. They went forward. And now he's made these people attack dogs to go after his enemies. It's incredible, incredible. And they did a great job of exposing it. And I do believe this, Mark. I believe that this is, when people see the price of eggs go up, when people can't afford a home, when people see their health care getting taken away, That's immediate. So they see it immediately. And we just have to show them how Trump is doing that. And as you said, we're really making good progress. Trump's numbers on the economy are now 38%. They used to be 55 because of the work we and others have done. But it takes a little while longer for people to sink in and see that if you don't have democracy, it's going to allow the special interests, if you don't have those guardrails, if you don't have those barriers, to do all the things they don't like. And that's one of the next steps that we have to pursue, and we're pursuing.
We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Senator Schumer in a moment. But, in 2020, I started DemocracyDocket to be the leading source for news, information, and analysis for the pro-democracy movement. And this Wednesday at 5 p.m., July 2nd, I will be joined by a leader and a fighter for democracy, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. He'll come and discuss Trump's abuse of power, the recent rise of violence against elected officials, and what the future of politics for him and the Democratic Party have in store. So, look, there is a lot going on in democracy right now, but it is important that we all stay up to date. Please join us by becoming a premium member today and join this members only live podcast recording. I got to ask you a question, something of a personal question. You and I have known each other now for a long time, and I think you accurately describe me sometimes as the pessimist of the group. Yes. And you are the optimist of the group. We both are Jews from New York, and I always think that what makes me the pessimist is how could you look at 5,000 years of Jewish history and not be a pessimist? I think you came to the opposite conclusion. So why are you so optimistic?
Well, I am by nature an optimist. I don't think I could do my job as well as if I wasn't an optimist. And let me say two thoughts about that. One is just something that Raphael Warnock said. We had this beautiful meeting last week. Our two Minnesota senators were so shaken by the shootings of those four people, two of which passed away in Minnesota. They were at dinner with them an hour before, and then these people went to their homes and were shot right at their doorways. So it was horrible. But at the end, I asked Raphael Warnock, who is not only a senator, but a pastor, to say a prayer. And he said a line in there which sticks with me. And that is this. He said, "Evil always overreaches and thus contains in itself the seeds of its own destruction." I believe that with Trump. And I believe that in general. I believe that good prevails. Martin Luther King said, the arc of justice is long, but bends in the direction of history. I would add, if we bend it. But I'll tell you one other thing that makes me an optimist. My father. My father had a tough life. He's a very smart guy, but circumstance didn't let him go to college, didn't let him advance. And he had this junkie exterminating business, which he hated. He served in it for 45 years. When he died, I realized he died at 98, just a couple of years ago around Thanksgiving. But he never complained that he didn't get a good break or resented people who might have been given a better break than him. But he left me with values. He's still sort of almost sitting next to me with those values. One value, and they've shaped my life. One value, always help people who need help. That's the most important thing you can do, and that's what our religious teachings teach us. And that's Jewish, Christian, Muslim, so all of the great religions teach that. But the second thing he said is this: if you're doing something important, look in your heart, make sure it's the right thing to do, whether it's personal or professional or family or anything, make sure it's the right thing to do. But once you're sure it's the right thing to do, he said, persist, 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 never give up, and God will reward you and you will succeed. That's what I do. Story of my life. Persist, 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 never give up. And hopefully, even in these dark times where Trump is so evil and seems to have so much power, will persist and succeed.
Well, that is indeed the story of your life. That is my experience with you. You and I worked side by side in 2006 when you were running the DSCC, and when people thought George Bush was at his apex, you gained 6 seats. 2 years later, you gained 8 more seats.
Right.
Then you became assistant leader, I think, to Senator Reid, and you transformed the caucus. And as leader, you've been just an amazingly successful leader of Democrats in the Senate, but also a champion of democracy and someone who has just relentlessly, when we were all pushing really hard in the early days of the Biden administration to take on the issue of democracy, you became the champion for democracy. You became the champion for that issue, and you fought hard and hard and hard. And, there is no overcoming the fact that every Republican is against voting rights. But it is, if people could see the strength of your conviction and the fight and the smarts. I mean, the two things I always say about you that people, when they ask me about them, I say, number one, he's the smartest Democrat in politics. But number two, he's also a math savant. So we will somehow do the math thing another day. You should have been a card counter, I think, at a Vegas casino, perhaps, instead of a politician. Did you ever think about that?
I like numbers.
You do like numbers. Anyway, that is, that's the reason why I think you are playing such a vital role right now, and why I'm proud to be fighting along with you. And I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Marc, and for everything you do. You're one of the greatest weapons we have in fighting those who are trying to tear down our democracy and create an actual dictatorship. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Defending Democracy. Please make sure you're subscribed to Democracy Docket's newsletters to stay informed on the latest voting rights and democracy news.